Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to another conversation on Safe Space. I would like for you always to remember Safe Space is a conversational panel that is intended to be free of judgment, free of harassment, and free of emotional harm. We ask that you keep an open mind and be receptive to different perspectives. And tonight, we're still continuing with um, March, which is Social Work Awareness Month, and it's also Women's History Month. And so I have a beautiful queen on tonight. She is the counselor. Technically, she's a counselor because the duties that she performs go above and beyond um, the call of a counselor. She's the perfect person to have on to talk about social work and how to support families and the community. I would like to introduce to you Jerilynn Johnson. Miss
Thank
Johnson,
you.
go ahead and tell us about your certification and technically what you are supposed to do. And then we're going to get into what you actually do.
Okay. Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you, Cherie, so much for allowing me to join you all this evening. My name is Jerilynn Johnson. I have a master's of arts in school counseling. I have a bachelor's in psychology, and I had no clue what I was going to do with my bachelor's in psychology. I thought that you could graduate with a bachelor's in psychology and become a psychologist. So I have my bachelor's in psychology. I have my master's of arts in school counseling. I was a teacher for quite a few years before I decided that I wanted to just kind of impact, students on a broader level. I really love being with the same students every day, but I felt like what I had to give to the community was a little bubble, just being in the same classroom with the same students every day, which is kind of what made me think about social work. So I thought about social work, and I really thought that I wanted to be a social worker until I started to do my research and living in Chicago and wanting to still maintain, with Chicago public schools. I Doing my research, I found out that there was a significant difference between school counseling and social work. Um, Number one being is that social workers are typically spread between 2 and 3 schools, and they usually do a day and a half per week in each school that they're assigned to. And school counselors are typically just assigned to one school. And so I knew that in building relationships, that was something, major for me, was being, with the same population, just being able to impact more students in that same environment daily, and those families and staff members and teachers as well. And then the major difference was the fact that social workers work with the clinical team. And with the clinical team, there are a lot of legalities of as far as how many minutes you can serve, how many students, and depending on what the clinical team's evaluation is for, particular students, they may not even meet with those students. The student may just receive what are called consultation minutes, where the social worker
Mm.
just consults with other stakeholders and other staff members and teachers that may be working directly with that student. And so if a student does not have an IEP or a 504 plan, and they don't interact with the social worker much, because the social worker is spared between 2 or 3 different schools, and so they really don't have time to meet with students that are not on their caseload. Um, and so, but with school counseling, I am free to work with who I determine, needs
Mhm.
best suits the needs and the service that I can provide and the support that I can provide. And so, although counselors do needs assessments and we are, data oriented, I'm allowed to use my independent data to determine who receives my services. So I wanted that freedom to be able to work with a multitude of students. And with there being with Chicago Public Schools and with school counseling, period, there are 3 different tiers of services that students receive. Students receive tier one services, which is a
Mhm.
universal service to all students. So there's a curriculum that we decide that we're going to use, and students receive social emotional learning through that tier one. And that's your 100% of students. All students in the school should receive that. And then you have tier two services, which are like your small groups, and between 15 to 20% of your students will receive those small groups, and that's determined from my data, needs assessments from the students, the teachers, families, parents, guardians, things of that nature. And then you have 3 to 5% of your population that receive tier 3 services, which are the individual counseling. And so those are students that we have tried to work with in the universal setting, and we felt like they needed a little bit more support. And then maybe we put them in a group, and then we've determined that they need a little bit more one-on-one support besides that. One thing that I do love about being a school counselor is that everything that I do is confidential. So although I write
Mhm.
anecdotals for my students and whoever I serve, I only have to present them if it becomes a time where I have to go to court and my data or my notes are subpoenaed. Besides that, it's a strict confidentiality rule. What happens in my office stays in my office. My office is also a safe space. And unless a student decides to disclose that they want to harm themselves, harm someone else, or someone is threatening or is harming them, anything, and I mean anything that's talked about in my office, stays in my office. We do have the same type of licensure. So it's a professional education license, educator license. It's a type 73. So CPS, at least social workers and school counselors don't do both have the same certification. It's just that when it comes to the endorsement, I have a school counselor endorsement, and school social workers have the school social worker endorsement.
Well, from hearing your description of a school social worker, I feel like that title would have boxed you in because I cannot see you deciding that you're only going to talk to this
You
group.
hear
Because
me?
when I tell you, Miss Counselor Johnson is all over that building with dealing with the students, even students that don't necessarily need a counselor, but they're in the classroom and they're having some type of emotional breakdown, breakthrough. Counselor Johnson, is Miss Johnson in her office? Okay, go to Miss Johnson's office. And we're supposed to fill out forms. Every year in PD, she let us know what forms need to be filled out in order for her to service students. We don't fill out any forms. She still takes students. I think that's why we don't fill out the forms because we're like, if there's an issue with a student, Miss Johnson is going to take those students. She's going to take them right away. And I really appreciate what you do with the students, the interaction that you have with our students. We work in Inglewood, and our former principal, called our environment a triage, which is definitely it is an emotional triage. Our students are impacted by trauma, and in a way, as the staff, we're impacted by secondary trauma because listening to issues that the students have, as an adult, I'm thinking to myself, I'm an adult and this is something difficult for me to digest. But the students, they are living and surviving through this on a daily basis. And with the curriculum that you use, how is it that you're able to translate avocation for themselves to the students? Being a counselor, you know what it is that you can do to help them. What is it that you find that is helpful, whether it's the curriculum you use or through your expertise, that you can implement that students can then begin to advocate for themselves and for their own mental well-being, understanding that they are experiencing trauma?
So there's a couple different layers to that. The thing about trauma is that a lot of times people are so used to being subjected to that trauma that it no longer feels like trauma. So you first have
Mhm.
to be able to identify the fact that what you're dealing with is trauma. A few years ago, we distributed the Adverse Childhood Experience Questionnaire to our students, and it asked about 10 different questions. And really, when looking at the questions, a lot of the students were like, well, this is what's supposed to happen. Do you live in a one parent household? Do you have a family member or a friend or a friend of the family that's ever been to jail? Do you have a friend of the family that is or a family friend that has ever been addicted to alcohol or drugs? Do you have
Mhm.
have you ever experienced any domestic violence in your home? And Some of our
Mhm.
students, when we completed this questionnaire, they just decided to stop, because
Yeah,
it was
it's a
just, I'm,
lifestyle.
yeah, it's just
Mhm.
like, if I tell you this, then what? That's always question. Then what?
Yeah.
And so a lot of them just decided that they were going to stop, with the questionnaire. And so an assumption, is probably that a lot of those answers were going to be yes, but um, because there's 10 questions, the expectation is that if you answer five or more questions a yes, then you had a significant amount of adverse childhood experiences. 73%
Mhm.
of our students answer five or more yes. So that's an
Mhm.
overwhelming majority of our students that experience some sort of trauma, some sort of significant trauma in their childhood. And we're talking about kindergarten through 8th grade. So we're talking about students that and of course we kind of tiered the language to make sure that all students understood it. But we're talking about 5 year
Mhm.
olds, 6 year olds, 7 year olds, 8 year olds,
Mhm.
not just the teens, not just the middle school that was completing this survey. And we're talking about
Mhm.
73% of our students that answered five or more questions just in this survey. And so just even explaining what trauma is, and what it what it means when you see certain things in the neighborhood, and because we're used to it, because that's what we see, doesn't make it normal. Just because it's our normal doesn't make it normal. First thing. The second thing is that our students really, the problem is not them advocating for themselves, because they know what they want. They know what they need for the most part. It's the way that they
Mhm.
advocate themselves, for
Yeah.
themselves. And so
Mhm.
we have to speak about
Mhm.
positive language. We have to speak about creating healthy boundaries. We have to speak about,
Mhm.
when we're saying advocating for ourselves without cursing, advocating for ourselves, minus the violence, minus the volatile behavior,
Mhm.
advocating for ourselves minus threatening someone else in the process, understanding that just as you may feel violated, the other person involved may feel violated too. So just as you want to create healthy boundaries for yourself and advocate for yourself, you have to be willing to listen to the other party as they advocate for themselves as well. So it's more about making sure that they're advocating in a healthy way and in a positive way, so that the
Mhm.
outcome is
Mhm.
not another trauma, or the outcome is not another violent occurrence. And in,
Mhm.
in, in our populate with the student population that we serve, and in the community that we serve, there's generations and generations and generations of violence, generations and generations and generations of
Mhm.
poverty, generations and generations of emotional abuse, verbal abuse, and it's not labeled as such because it's become the norm. And so what we're trying to do is break down those barriers, break down those curses, and it's almost like we're starting over and over again every day, because they're with us for 7 hours, but then they go home.
Mhm.
And so it's much
Mhm.
more than just the students. And so my perspective, and my the way that I try to work is holistic, because I don't only want to reach the students can be great, but without their families, the students are only going to be great. And we want to see our students thrive. We
Mhm.
want to see our students be successful in every area of life. And so we have to have the parent and the family buy in too, in order to really, really get those students to actually understand, what it is that we're trying to do. And so servicing the students is the rather easy part, because they trust us and we develop a relationship with them. It's combating what they're hearing at home and in the community versus what they're hearing at school. And so we almost have to separate those two worlds and let them know we understand that at home you take care of all five of
Mhm.
your siblings, and so you probably have a full day before you even get to school. And that's one major thing that we have to understand, is that these students are living full lives before they even step in our building every day. They're getting
Yes. Yes.
siblings ready. They're cooking breakfast. They're washing clothes. They're ironing clothes. They're making sure their baby sister has her gloves on. They're making sure that they grab masks for themselves and their other five siblings, and then they're making it from 71st Street to 74th Street, in 2 inches of snow with no boots. Like, there's so many different layers of what
Mhm.
it is that they have to go through. And then when they get into our classroom, what we want to ask them is, where's your pencil? Where's your notebook? Where's your paper? Where's your
Mhm.
homework? Where's your permission
Mhm.
slip? Why didn't you bring that back? And so, just as we expect for our kids to develop some sort of social empathy, another layer of that is making sure that we're responding, with empathy as well.
Very true. That is very true. Because I know I have a number of students that they don't have the notebook, they don't have the book bag, and I just rather, okay, I have a notebook for you. That's fine. I have scratch paper for you. Don't worry about it.
And the
I got
caveat
you.
to that is they may
Yes,
have the $300 shoes on though. And so then we looking
yeah,
at them like, you don't
yeah,
have no pencil, you
yeah.
don't have no paper, but you got them $300 Jordans on. But another layer to that is that we have to understand that everybody's morals and value lies differently. And some of these
Mhm.
parents are saying you're gonna look the part even if you don't have it.
Exactly. And
And
then
so
we
we're
can't hold them responsible for what their parents do. We
hmm
can't, and it's sometimes it's a lot easier said than done. But you can't, if they have on the designers top to bottom, they don't control the money in the family.
hmm they don't.
So
And you don't have to look the way you're living, and
no.
in our community especially, it's all about how you look. And it's
Yes, you can be
because they're
impeccable
judged on
on
how they
the
look.
outside and then on the inside just broken, just
Yep.
a total mess.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of our students are experiencing. And with you being a counselor where you are all over the building, the support that you provide to the students, the way that I see you interact with students on a daily basis, I have never ever seen Miss Johnson having a bad day. And I know for Miss Johnson, the person, for Jerilynn, that's a lot to digest.
Yeah.
The information. I know with my classroom alone, some of the information that I get when the students talk to me, it's overwhelming.
hmm
But for there's over what, 40 classrooms of students that upload you with all the horrifics that's going on in their lives. And that can be such a heavy burden to bear. Um,
hmm
as a counselor, what thus far has been one of your most difficult cases?
um I would have to say the most difficult case is trying to help someone with the same battle that you're facing. Last Friday was the 10th year death anniversary of my mom. And so I have a student that I'm working with that actually lost her mom to cancer a couple of years ago. And I lost my mom to cancer 10 years ago. And so the little girl in me still wants my mommy too, So
Mhm.
it's
And you're an
difficult.
adult.
Yeah.
And you're an
Yes.
adult.
I'm an adult with two daughters, and so it's difficult because how do you help someone when you're still grieving yourself? And the situations are so similar. And the feelings are so similar, and just listening and seeing and hearing the daily roller coaster that this particular student goes through, and I connect so much more than on a professional school counselor level. So how do I maintain my professionalism?
Mhm.
And then how do I help this student, because I'm still figuring out how to help myself. And I would say that that's probably the toughest. But then, what I realize is that being transparent and being open and honest is the best way to help, because the situations that we're faced with, the situations that our students, that our population, that our parents, that we're faced with, they don't go away. They don't go away just because they have a counselor. They don't go away because they have a, dope Miss Johnson. The situation doesn't go away, or because they have a dope Miss Munoz for a teacher. So what we're trying to do is figure out how to find healthy coping strategies and healthy coping skills to combat when we feel what we feel. Because grief never goes away. There's
Mhm.
different cycles of grief, but grief doesn't go away.
Mhm.
And so just kind of talking myself through that and being able to, maintain that professionalism, but still, finding that fine line where it's okay to be a human with our students too. So we talk about relationships and boyfriends and girlfriends and breakups and friendships, and when friendships go sour and when our parents get on our nerves, and when we feel less than, we talk about all of that, and I open up to my students too, and let them know that, behind all the education, behind the clothes that you all see us in, behind the smiles that you all see us with, we're human as well, and
Mhm.
we're combating, situations every day, family, friends, the same things that you all are. And so I think just being able to understand that it's okay to humanize yourself in that professional moment
Mhm.
really
Mhm.
helps, because when you try to keep up that facade and keep up that wall, um, you're disconnecting with your students and you're interfering with the relationship building. And so although it's still a daily task that I work on every day, I would just have to say that, when you run into a student that's dealing with a situation that has happened to you, or a situation that you're facing, sometimes it's difficult to be objective. So
Mhm.
you have to make sure that I as a counselor, and I as Jerilynn, I have to make sure that I understand what my triggers are. I have to make sure that I understand what it is that makes me feel certain emotions and makes me feel certain types of way. Because if I don't, and I act like it doesn't exist, I'm going to become out of control when it does happen, when I do get triggered. But when I know what triggers me, and I understand what triggers me and why it triggers me, then I'm able to kind of foresee what's going to happen and then prepare myself for it. It's kind of like, um, when if you have a headache, and if you have a headache and you understand why you're having that headache, then it's a little bit easier for you to prepare. If I eat certain, citric foods, it's going to, trigger my headache. But if I haven't taken the time to understand what the root cause of my headaches are, all of a sudden I'm just going to have this headache and I'm not going to be able to function because I have no idea what's going on. So that's what's most important, is as an adult, understanding what it is that ticks me off, so that when it happens with students, I'm not becoming this subjective kid again.
Right. Now, with that being said, how successful are you with involving parents? So, because I know you definitely reach out to the community, you reach out to families. Um, how has how has the family been an effective part of you trying to combat those issues that the students are having that has stemmed from trauma? How are the families? Are they open to what you're talking about, or are they shut off and I'm not crazy, I don't need to talk to anyone, we're going to be fine? What have you found out that happens with the families?
A little bit of both sometimes. Sometimes they're open, and sometimes, it's that you only talk to a counselor if you're crazy. That stigma. You only talk to a counselor if you're
Yes,
crazy. You only
especially in the
talk to
black
a
and brown
counselor if something is
community.
wrong. And, one of the major things that I've had to get people to understand is that I celebrate with you all too. I celebrate victories too. So it's not just about when something is wrong. It's not just about when something is happening. It's not just about when you're feeling sad. I want to hear all the celebrations too. I want to celebrate with you too. I want to, also, talk about the happy times with you, and all of the, victories. I want to hear about all of those too. um and so that's the first thing that I have to, get rid of, is that stigma that only when there is something going on that's, adversive, is that when we talk to Miss Johnson. And so being able to do that with the students, and then the students, sometimes the students will call their parents and say, I'm using Miss Johnson phone, father-daughter dance, for instance. This is the first time we've had a father-daughter dance and I don't know how long, and so the students calling for my phone and asking their dad, can they, they're gonna bring this permission slip home, and Miss Johnson, already looked it over, and is it okay if Miss Johnson signs it because today is the last day, and so just
Mhm.
making sure that I'm a part of everything that's going on in the school, and not just secluding myself and saying, oh, I'm only going to, I can only talk to you if this is going on or if that is going on, and I also because a lot of times when the counselor calls home, they're like, oh, are you gonna call DCFS on me? And I'm
Yeah.
like, no, that's not what this is about at all. My job is to support. And my job is to make sure that you can support and that you know how to support. And so this is just, it's less of a, it's not pointing fingers. It's just, it's just having a conversation. And I also humanize myself with my parents too, and let them know, like, hey, I have a 3 and I have a
Yes.
13-year-old at home, so I understand there's a lot of things that these teenagers are going through right now that I'm going through at home with my own child, with my own, daughter. And so because of that, I know what it is that she needs from me. And a lot of times our parents are faced, they single parent household, two jobs, multiple kids,
Mhm.
barely making it themselves. And so it's kind of hard to sometimes see what somebody needs from you emotionally when you are not even really able to tap into your own emotions because you're just on the run, running,
Yeah.
running, running, going, going, going.
Mhm.
And so sometimes it's not always successful, but I try again, and then I try again. And then sometimes I have to get creative because I do have parents that won't always sign the permission, the consent form to meet with, for them to meet with me regularly. So now I do check-ins with the students. So I'm down in the gym room in the morning checking in with students because that's not technically a session. So sometimes I do have to get creative with my students. But I also have to be transparent and upfront with my students and let them know, like, hey, if there is something that you tell me that that needs to be expressed to your parents, as far as harming yourself, wanting to harm somebody else or somebody harming you, then of course I do have to let them know. But I tell them anything about sex, anything about needing to go to the doctor, anything of that nature, because in the state of Illinois, any student over the age of 12 is able to do all of receive contraceptives, go to the doctor, get STI tests, all of those things they're able to do independently. And so although, as a parent, I twinge,
Mhm.
but as a
Mhm.
counselor, I have to understand that these students are going to make choices. And do I want them to make knowledgeable, resourceful choices, or do I want them going to talk to the same students that probably know just about as much as they do?
Mhm.
So I have to step outside of, sometimes I have to step outside of being a parent. I have to step outside of, knowing what, us as parents may want, and making sure that I'm servicing who I'm directly here for, other students. So I have to get creative with it sometimes. And I've ran into some things before where the parents weren't really thrilled about what it was that I helped their students with. But um it's just something that you have to understand that everybody is not all students are not going to feel comfortable talking to their parents. And
Right.
I have to present them with the same question. Do you want them to make a ignorant, and I mean that in the most a sensitive way,
Mhm.
do you want them out here making ignorant decisions, hoping for the best, or would you rather, even though you weren't a part of it, would you rather them know that they had actual facts?
Exactly. Yes. And they're informed by a person who's going to give them the facts in a caring, responsible
Mm.
manner. So
Yep.
that, as a parent, don't tell my child to do this, but I am glad that they're going to a responsible adult as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to amongst a bunch of unknowledgeable.
Yep. And the most difficult part
Yeah.
is that
Yeah.
I won't tell, as bad as I say, now why would you go do something like that? I can't say that. And I won't say that because there's no
Mhm.
judgment involved. All I want to make sure
Mhm.
is that whatever decision it is that you make is knowledgeable and it's resourceful, and you make the decision based off of the information that you have and not
Mhm.
what you think you know.
Yeah.
And it may not, and that's a tough pill to swallow too, because sometimes they don't always make the decision that I feel like is in their best interest. And that
Mhm.
comes to choosing high schools, that comes to who they decide to involve themselves with, as friendship wise, relationship wise, or other. um but it's only my job to make sure that you have the tools to make a knowledgeable decision and not make your decision for you.
Yes, because you can't. I'm giving you this information. Now I want you to make the decision like I think you should make the decision. It does,
Right.
it doesn't work like that. It's just this is all of the information. This
Right.
is this is the profession. This is what the profession. This is the evidence. Now it's up to you on how you're going to make your choices. Yeah,
Absolutely.
but providing them with the tools that's needed to make. Well, I'm not going to say sound decisions, but they have the information. So when they make their decision, everything was laid out on the table for them.
Yep.
So that's definitely a plus. And with the students, you are, like you say, well, I'm not going to say an open book, but you are transparent. And,
Hmm.
they do come to you for any, and when I say any and everything, when students, they come to me, our young ladies, Miss Munoz, I need this. I was like, go to Counselor Johnson's office. I I don't need those anymore. So I don't have them. So go to Counselor Johnson. I'm 100% sure she's going to have what you need. Couple days ago, a student was upset, she didn't like her hair. And I told her, I was like, I don't have any ponytails. I was like, I don't have anything. I don't have a jail or nothing. Go find Counselor Johnson. You were doing something else. Luckily, there was an eighth grader who had some jail, and they
Okay.
have their whole beauty kits.
Yeah.
So I was like, can you help? There's nothing wrong with it. But just because I say there's nothing wrong with you,
Mm-hmm.
or your hair looks fine, if you don't think your hair looks a certain way, I can tell you all day, every day, and it
Yeah.
doesn't make a
It
difference.
doesn't make a
And so the
difference.
eighth grader took her in there and, got her squared away. And that's how do we get through that layer? We have so many students that we are affirming, but until they accept it from themselves, how do we
Mm-hmm.
get them to accept it from themselves?
Well, one of the major things, like you said, we can say it, 1,000 times, and if they
Mhm.
don't believe it, but I'm a big so my background is CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and so my vision has always been once you think it, you start to think it, and then it becomes a habit, and then it becomes a routine, and then it becomes a lifestyle. So you have to speak it, think it, speak it, say it. All right, think it, speak it, live it. And so, what a lot of times what I do, I have a mirror in my office. I give a lot of, especially, young ladies and young men, but I give them a journal, and I give them a pocket.
I don't hear you. Can you hear me? Because I can't hear you. Give us 1 second. We're having some technical difficulties. Okay, so
I'm not sure what happened.
there. Okay,
Okay.
we good.
So I was saying, and so I give them some pocket journals, and what I tell them is that every day is not going to be a good day. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off, and when we get up in the morning, or when we get to the school, or whatever case, first thing in the morning when we check in, I want you to think of 3 good things about yourself. You're going to say those things to yourself, and you're going to write them down in your journal. Because on your bad days or your not so good days, when you don't have those words to speak to yourself, you're going to read them to yourself. And so you're going to open up your journal, and you're going to read those different things that you said about yourself. What we have to do is you have to combat, just like with cancerous cells, the good cells have to outweigh the bad cells. So every day is not going to be a good day. Everything is not going to always be positive. And that's just realistically speaking. So what do
Mhm.
you do on those days? You build yourself up so much during those positive days, and on those negative days, you have those positive words to look back at. So when I don't have the words, and it's the same thing I do with myself, the same thing I do with my daughters, every day when we wake up, we say 3 positive things to ourselves. And so on those not so good days, we got to pull from another source because we may not have it to say. So you always got to have another source. So what I do is I give them the power to have other sources, so that you're not looking for somebody else to build you up, because you ain't going to always have that person. And it could be your mom, your dad, your sisters, your brothers, your aunties, uncles, grandparents. Everybody is not going to always be that space for you. It's just we can't always do it, because if I'm struggling, it's going to be difficult for me to uplift you, and I'm having a hard time uplifting myself.
Mhm.
So what we do is we provide them with the power for them to do those things for themselves, and for them to overcome those negative days with those positive words. And you have to do that on a daily. You have to speak to yourself on a daily. You have to, be able to learn how to refocus, learn how to reset your mind, understand that when you're not having a good day, that's okay. I will allow my students, and I tell my students all the time, it's okay to not have a not so good day, but you can't stay there.
No, you
So
can't.
you can feel those emotions, you can feel that anger, feel that sadness, feel that that frustration, feel that overwhelmingness. You can feel all of that. But you identify why you feel that way. We identify that together, and then you don't let yourself stay there, because emotions are only temporary. They only last as long as you allow them to. And so
Mhm.
once you decide that you're not going to feel that way anymore, then you make certain strides to combat those emotions, because we do, as much as we feel like we don't have control over our emotions, we have control over our emotions. But that's a learned behavior, to
Mhm.
feel, to be able to combat and control your emotions. That's a learned behavior, and it takes time. And so that's why sometimes, I may work with the student, with the same students. You may see me working with the same students 3, 4, 5 years in a row, and that's because the work is never done.
Yeah.
But those students that I work with, those are the students that are going to become our peer mentors. And so those are the ones that are teaching our babies, to look in the mirror and say, I'm pretty, I'm smart, I'm beautiful, I'm intelligent, and they may not even know those words exactly what they mean yet. But having somebody else tell them that, it makes them smile, because when you speak positive words, you look positive. It's a
Yeah.
difference when you look,
Yeah. Yes.
it's a
Yeah.
difference, and so it's just really important that we are, that we speak into the universe what it is that we want. So if you want a house that you don't have to pay a mortgage on, you don't say I don't want to pay a mortgage anymore. You say I want my house paid off, because
Mhm.
the universe hears exactly what it is that we say. So you make sure that you're speaking the words that you want, because all the universe hears is
Yes.
mortgage pay. Okay,
Mhm.
I got you.
Yeah.
But if you say I want my house paid off. Okay, I got you.
Yes.
So what we're, and these are lessons that we're learning as adults, and things that I'm still
Yes.
working on every day. And that's the
Yes.
cool thing about being a counselor, is that, when I'm speaking to them, I'm speaking to myself too.
Yes. Yes. And that makes me think about with my students, um, like the first 15 minutes of class, Miss Johnson, I have them, my AM and my PM
Mm-hmm.
students, we're working on affirmations.
Yep.
They have their list of
I've heard you all do
affirmations.
that before.
Yes. And they have to choose an affirmation. You don't only get to choose an affirmation, you have to tell me why you chose that particular affirmation, or why that particular affirmation chose you.
Okay.
And then we listen to motivation videos from Dr. Eric Thomas. And
Mm-hmm.
then you have to share with the class why that particular statement spoke to you. What about that statement that he said? And, students will say, oh, well, he said that he was homeless. Well, I was homeless at one particular time. And if he's doing this, then I know that I'm gonna be okay. Or he
Right.
didn't have a father and I don't have my father in my life. So it's just things that they connect with, but
Mm-hmm.
I want them to identify. I just don't want them blindly. I am strong. I am smart.
Right.
No, you're going to come with some different affirmations
Yep.
that's positive, that you're speaking daily. And like you just said, Miss Johnson, even though they are speaking to themselves, I'm sitting there and receiving that. And that's just like a lot of positivity that's going out into, that's a lot of positive energy that's going
Absolutely.
out and being received by everyone. And it makes me think, like, the first couple of weeks of school, when we're doing the affirmations, we got Black kids from Inglewood. They are not trying to share their emotions like that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to say by October, when I tell you students are upset that they did not get an opportunity to share
Yep.
their affirmations and to share their emotions, and it really does something to them to know that they're speaking life into themselves, because
Yep.
I go hard on it. I was like, no, you speaking life to yourself. You have to be able to affirm yourself, and you have to do this. And
Yep.
then, Miss Tim, you take this serious. Yes, I want you to be able to speak life into yourself,
Mm-hmm.
because it is so, Miss Johnson, it is so important, especially like you say, we have parents that they so busy living their life, whatever how they got to that point, it's irrelevant.
Yep.
They live in their life, and we still have their babies
Mm-hmm.
that we have to deal with on a regular basis, where we are trying to combat a lot of negativity, a
Yep.
lot of catastrophe that they are receiving on a regular basis. So trying to reaffirm them, teaching them to reaffirm themselves, and really just like planting a seed. We probably won't see what happens in the next 5, 6, 7 years, but to just know we planted those positive seeds. So I'm hoping that once they're in high school, in college, they know, what, I got to speak life into myself. I need to get into a place where I need to go back to my affirmations and, my mindfulness that I used to do back when I was in grades. Because I think about that now. I'm just learning this over the last, I want to say, Miss Johnson, maybe 5 years.
Right.
Start
Exactly.
learning about affirmations. And so with them at a young age, where we're teaching them, the positive affirmations, the mindfulness, the breathing, providing them with all these different strategies to help cope with their social emotional, being able to identify this. It is so important. It is
Yep.
so important.
And we're setting them up for success, because I tell them all the time, the support that you receive right now, let me tell you something, you will never receive this level of support again.
No,
You
no.
will never receive this level of support again. And so I want you to soak it all in, learn how to love yourself, learn how to speak to yourself, learn how to speak to others, because I've had too many students out in these streets that feel like that what we tell them is not important and it's not real life. And I see about them on the news getting killed, or I hear about them being in jail, because they don't think that what we're telling them is the truth, And I'm like, I need to hear more success stories. And
Mhm.
so that's why and that's why I lay it on so thick on them, because
Mhm.
you got to, because your routine is going to become your lifestyle. And so whatever it is that you're doing in
Mhm.
these walls, you're going to end up doing outside. So if we let you talk to each other any kind of way, if we let you all talk to us any type of way, if we let you all sit here and fight and fuss and cuss each other, you all are going to go out into the streets expecting the same type of love, but given the same type of behavior. And that's not
No,
realistic.
no.
And so we got to create, we have to create positive routines. We got to create healthy routines, because the babies are looking at us. They
Yeah,
looking at us and they listening to us, whether we know it or not.
yeah,
And so that's why to me it's so important to just continue to speak that and continue to have them, do those affirmations every day. Talk to yourself every day. Speak positive to yourself every day, because there's going to be a time when somebody is not rooting in the background, like, do it, do it, do it. And you got to do it yourself. So we're setting these babies up for success in Inglewood, yes, where the poverty
yes,
level is
yes,
here, and the level of resources is down here.
yes, yes. Well, Miss Johnson, this has been an awesome
It
conversation.
absolutely has. I
You
always love
have
talking to you.
provided, yes, yeah, we do connect, and I so appreciate, because you have been a support for me, because there's been times that I'm just like, ugh, and have pulled me aside to have a conversation. Are you okay? And I remember a couple years back when I had a student that was like, oh God,
Yeah, I remember.
and being able to pull me aside, whether or not I was receptive at that time. Because, like, when you're in a moment where your
Mm-hmm.
emotions are high, sometimes you're not going to receive the
Yeah.
information that's being presented. But then when you do look back, and that's what I hope happens, that no, I'm not going to hope. That's what I know will happen with our scholars. They're going to think back like, you know what? This is what the staff at STAG
Yeah.
did for us.
And
This
that's
is what
because we
I'm going
presented
to
with
need.
love. We presented with love
Yes.
and not with the authoritative, finger. We
Yes.
presented with love. And so and students and anybody always going to receive something a little bit different, because they know where it's coming from. They know what place it's coming from.
Yes. And that's when when you're on your prep and your lunch and you have a
What
lot
is that?
of
I haven't
students.
had either one of those in so long. What is that?
I I run into my classroom and I lock the door. I have Miss Pam, Miss Munoz, I'm coming with you. No, you not. I come into the classroom. How'd you get in my classroom? I thought I locked the door. But
Mm-mm.
that just tells me that it's something that I'm giving them, that they are receiving some type of love, the affirmation. And they are pain in the butts, but we love them. We just
And if they acted any different, we wouldn't know what to do, to be honest
we
with you.
wouldn't. We
Yeah,
wouldn't. I don't know how I would function in a different school.
I'm
When I
telling you.
first came to Inglewood, I was like, oh no, this. I'm gonna tell you where I'm not going to be teaching, and now I love it.
Yeah.
I love it when I have a problem. Students that I had years ago, they're having an issue where I can let them know, get over, just
Yeah.
talk to them like, what are you doing? You know better than that. Don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Or when they see you coming in the hallway and they cutting up and then they start to straighten up, they're gonna miss him. And
Yeah.
it
Oh,
had to be a
my
minute
bad. My
to get to a
bad. My
point.
bad.
Yeah, because it had to get to it was a minute before I was able to walk down the hallway and receive that type of respect. Now it's like, excuse me, scholars,
Yeah.
this is not the expectations. And they straighten up, and it's just a great feeling to receive as an educator also.
Absolutely.
And I want to definitely thank you, Miss
No,
Johnson.
thank you for asking me, for having me. I appreciate it
Yes.
so much.
Well, you, honey, you know, when I tell out here in these different schools, you have people who do their jobs,
Hmm.
and then you have people that have a certain lifestyle inside of the building. I feel you have a certain lifestyle inside of the building because you go above and beyond with the students and the families, and they need it. They need it so much. And I just, I appreciate you, and I brought you on so that you can share. And anyone that has a conversation with you, within 2 minutes of that conversation, they are going to know that you are professional and not just nice, because you're a nice person, but you are kind and loving. And, the
Thank
services
you.
that you provide our students, it is well received because the students just love you. And not so much that they just love you, but you are really supporting them. You're really providing them the
Thank
support
you.
that they need because, yeah, our students, they're going through a lot.
Yeah.
They are going through a lot. And, it's easy to say, oh, well, that's the parent. Yeah, it is the parent's fault. Yeah, okay.
But
And
we here now, so what we gonna do?
okay, what we
You
gonna do?
know?
Like Miss Knox said, okay, now what we gonna do? Everybody done gave them the diagnosis. We already now what you gonna do.
Yep.
So I just want to thank you for coming on to Safe Space, and thank you for being in the building because we definitely need you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you
I
so much.
appreciate that so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
And thank you guys for tuning in to another conversation on Safe Space. And as always, please take a moment and shine your light in the dark.